Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Danae, and I'm here with a message for you. And an exciting one indeed already because I am starting to, as previously previewed, share some of the decks that I've been collecting, and of course some of the products that I've been I've been supporting. And today, straight out of the box, ripped out the plastic, I received the Kipper-ish Oracle deck by Intuitive Kev. I'm really excited about this one. I have others that I've had for a while, but I don't know, I just felt guided to start with this one. It's been circulating for a long time. I'm sure you've come across it once you see the artwork because that's what captivated me. But it's been circulating a while with other content creators and spiritualists. And so has his channel. Intuitive Kev is the channel. I'll link his Etsy shop and also his channel link down below, his channel handle down below. But of course, I was slow to the game, tardy to the party, but better late than never. So I'm really excited. I'm a little bit nervous. It's one thing to endorse products that I can just speak to freely because I've actually used them. But it's another thing to actually work with another creator's deck because I have created a couple decks myself coming to you soon, and I know just how precious these works of art, literally works of art for Kev, are. And so I just want to do it justice, you know what I mean? So it's more pressure on me personally to just do the cards justice, whatever cards that I pick up, because I personally, I have this passion to really showcase cards of creators that I actually watch or have had a connection to or feel some type of, synergy or resonance with, as opposed to collecting hella random cards, which you can't sometimes vouch for the origins or the creator of them. So as I said, since I already kind of have an affinity, I love his messages. I was late to his channel, as I said, but when I do tap in, I love his messages. He's so freaking funny, so clear, so raw. And like I said, I've been seeing his artwork through the cards and other creators for a long time. So much, I was so captivated by them that I went and did my research to find, like, where did these cards come from? I literally like searched cards, tarot cards with the circle noses or something like that, and sure enough, it popped up, and I was like, the Kipper-ish deck. Side note, I've always wanted the Kipper deck because I know it's popular and it has a heightened energy to it, but I've also felt when I watch other people use it that it's heavy and dark as well. Like, something about that energy is very heavy and dark. Like, I feel like you use it for a very specific purpose. So again, I felt like this was a great substitute and alternative, really, for what I wanted in that deck that I'll probably not get now, most likely. Following my guidance to more of the light and things that I connect with, I'll probably just, be good with this one, but we'll see. So anyway, this is like a kid on Christmas for me, like playing with their new toy for the first time. So I may have said all of that for nothing if I end up not posting this. But if you heard all that and you're hearing this, then here we are. So give me a little grace on this first time breaking it open. And yeah, I look forward to sharing future messages with this, and again with the other things that I've been procuring in my little collection. All right, so without further ado, I think I kind of cut these, but let's just do it anyway. Let's cut the cards. And by the way, I did do a pre-shuffle with the traditional tarot cards that was very, very positive, but we'll just, because I just did so much talking, let's just go into this message and I'll see how it aligns, which I'm sure it probably will. Hope you're doing well, by the way. Today is, I believe, the 30th. Let's see. Yeah, Tuesday, September 30th, 2025. We're almost in October, which is crazy. It'll be Halloween before you know it, and my son already has his costume, so he is officially counting down to his favorite holiday. Oh, man. All right, let's see what we got here. 12 o'clock on the dot. Rich girl with the number 12. Get the freak out of here. Okay, we'll probably be posting this because that's some serious confirmation right there. Oh my God, rich girl on the bottom of the deck. Yes, come through. And I did literally skimmed the like the guide, and so I know that the rich girl is the queen of, is like kind of the equivalent of the Queen of Pentacles, more or less. But wow, what a wonderful way to start, a wonderful omen, and definitely does connect even more specifically to the message that I got earlier, which is just this dawning of a new day. You know, that's been a long time coming for spiritual warriors. Not even just spiritual warriors, but just warriors of the light in their own lives. You know, it doesn't even have to be all deep like that. It could even be, practically speaking, those that have just been fighting the good fight to create a good life for themselves, a productive life, let alone a prosperous one. And it seemed to have been a long time coming, in some ways like an uphill battle, with a lot of resistance, you know, like a lot of trials and tribulations and obstacles, you know, relative to your life. You know, one man's trials and tribulations may not be so for another, but as far as you're concerned, you know, life for you ain't been no crystal stairs. You know, like you've had your own set of challenges. And via, you know, per the pre-shuffle, it's just like finally reaping the fruits of your labor, and not just reaping them and gathering them, but actually enjoying them, harvesting them, and perhaps at this point reinvesting is what's in store now for you. So this is a beautiful way to start. 12, which breaks down to a 3, that whole mind, body, spirit, mind, body, Trinity energy that's just like full circle, you know, as far as your human being is concerned, when you really have a grasp of all 3 of those frequencies, and a balance, you know, between the 3, a healthy balance. That's almost an oxymoron, right? A healthy balance, but it's not, it materializes in a physical way, such as wealth and abundance, maybe even richness, good fortune, abundance of gifts, talents, or even just really those that have an abundance of gifts and talents. As I said, the investment part, having a great deal of direction and wisdom on how to reinvest, or how to make those gifts and talents work for you, or work in your favor to advance your life that much more, to progress your life that much more. So this is a beautiful way to start. It really, really is. And I mean, she's looking like new money and old money in a way. You know, and it could be old wealth that has been stored from I'm getting this like from ancient covenants that is aligning with your or you have aligned with that frequency to receive that in this lifetime. So it may have the appearance of new money in this timeline, but it actually is an ancient trust that's being released and passed down. And now that gets to be regenerated, to pass forward and pass down, where there may have been gaps in that inheritance or in that passing forward, where you could, back to the trials and tribulations piece, could have been in a season, or your bloodline could have been in a season or an extended season as in a lifetime, or one or two or three of struggle, maybe even of poverty, of misfortune, of upheaval, of strenuous work, labor, and now it's turning around because the rich girl, particularly, is 100% in reception mode, but also, again, has the fortitude to know how to make money work for her so that she doesn't have to necessarily work so hard. The money's doing the work, or the gifts are doing the work, or the talents are doing the work, the abilities are doing the work, the investments are doing the work for her. So if you resonate with that, God bless you indeed. And Godspeed with your investments and in spirit and in truth. And if you may be in a place where you're like, well, I don't quite see that yet, just hold on. Just hold on. It may be on the way. And here, I love the cards. I love the what do you call this? I guess the trimming is a beautiful silver, so shiny and sparkly. So it's a lot of cards for me to handle. My deck is a little smaller, and it's 101 cards in this deck. So again, bear with me in this shuffle as I try to wrap my hands around it, literally. All right. Oh man. All right. Oh no, emotional pain. Let's see what else we got. And I'm going to tell you what was on the other side of that pre-shuffle that I didn't really want to bring into this message, starting off with the rich girl, but it makes sense. So I guess no frequency left behind. Some folks are just not having that great of a fortune right now. And, it's been kind of like that polarity and duality has kind of been coming up in my more in recent messages, not even just by per me, but that's just like the energy, that is being expressed and shared lately. But I definitely did see this frequency come up in the pre-shuffle, where some folks are just really feeling at a loss for time, considering opportunities that they had to make wise investments in the past, and where those investments have what those investments, whether it be in time, money, energy, gifts, talents, connections, whatever, the associations, what it's all amounted to at this point has been, is turning out to be less than favorable, certainly less than fortunate, and is really kind of dredging up a spirit of regret, regret, and in some cases despair. So this emotional pain that we have here is literally given that energy, tears of regret. In some cases, maybe remorse, but we know that remorse and regret is two different frequencies. There could be remorse in some ways, of those that truly are sorrowful for their misguidance, maybe their missteps, their ill-informed choices, maybe even amidst a disconnection from their emotional selves, like from their compassion, their empathy, their sympathy for others, that now is kind of having a backfire effect, and it's being experienced firsthand, in ways that almost seem intensified from what they've ever had to encounter in some ways. Like I'm feeling this energy of like everything, every emotion ever repressed coming up for some now to finally confront or deal with or acknowledge, maybe even heal in the best case scenario. And the 32, of course, breaks down to a 5, so it's a matter of change. And some of the most intense challenges for change may be painful for some, to learn a different way to be, to unfortunately reflect on how one has been, and really take accountability and responsibility for that as well. It could be more painful. And what's the word that I'm really feeling? Painful, or damn, I hear excruciating, but that's not the word that I think I want. I don't know. It's something deep here now. All right, let's get to it. Somebody's crying. It may be on the inside because his eyes are closed. And it could be folks that don't want to see, don't want to be caught in their sadness. But part of the healing process is, being transparent, or at least being honest with yourself about it. Yeah, and I was just going to say, wow, with the community. And I was just going to say, I feel like it's on account of what folks are witnessing. And really, like, even with his eyes closed, it's like, as I said, there's like a disparity of experiences, where it could be dire and distress for some. It's, bliss and happiness, excitement for others. It's like two different worlds, two different life experiences happening. Of course, everything in between, but I'm talking about the stark differences in experience where you almost feel like there's two, like you could almost feel like there's a whole nother world existing aside from yours by the way your life is going. When you look around and observe the general consensus of society and the country and even the world, it could vary. Although it affects us all, there are certain things that are ineffective when you live on a certain vibration or a certain frequency, or at least that you don't allow to affect you in the ways that they may affect the masses. It doesn't make it any less true or any less important, but even your perspective of certain things is just not the same. It's like, to the rest of the world, to the rest of the population in some way, the world could be going to hell in a handbasket. But for you, especially if you relate as a star seed, it could be the beginning of something new and exciting. It could be the dawning of a new day, as I said in the pre-shuffle. It could be a time for great expectations. There could physically, literally be amazing things happening in your life to the point where it almost feels like you can almost be tempted to feel a sense of regret, not regret, guilt for having the experience that you have, or at least to kind of like tone it down. Like, all right, don't do too much on the bliss and the glee out here in these streets. You know what I mean? Because everybody is not experiencing that, and you don't want to appear to be insensitive or, to be tone deaf to the 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 lower frequencies of society as it is now. Because as I said, it's not that it's not important, but it's just like, a star seed or an energy that operates in their supreme energy, that aspires to their most supreme frequency and most supreme self, is always going to be looking for solutions or ways to create or ways to counteract the lowest frequency, even within themselves. Not even that they're immune to having days of sadness or an emotional, a lower vibrational of emotional current at times, perhaps, but there's always a transmutation that a star seed is going to defer to, that would allow them to take, more or less, to make lemonade out of lemons. So whatever it is that I'm dealing with at this time, not only can you find the silver lining, you can find the lesson, you can find the motivation or the inspiration to do something with it. You can find the value in it. You can literally take whatever it is at hand, and transform it into, transform it into something, something precious, one way or another, profitable or productive, and that is why the star stands out perhaps from the community here at large, because not everybody possesses that power. Unfortunately, a lot of the community, meaning society overall, is governed by their emotions in a way that can be manipulated or projected upon quite easily. And the star seed's greatest, their greatest, what do you call it? What's the right word? Not character, but their greatest trait, I guess, perhaps their greatest trait again is to really to ground themselves in what they're feeling, even if it is a matter of accepting a moment of sadness and sorrow, but again, knowing how to properly place it or reinvest it for something more productive. And that's the standout. That's the standalone of the star seed versus the community, where some may be having some emotionally emotionally maybe captivated by their emotions, maybe even easily controlled from that state, or allow their emotions to be predicated upon things that are fleeting or unstable, or insecure in many ways, like money, like security by societal standards, like acceptance, validation, all of those things, understanding, even inclusion, another word. And that energy, I mean, in the star seed card, I can imagine, I don't remember seeing that one in the guide, but definitely represents the star card, I'm assuming, which makes the most sense, which is Aquarius energy. So it's really a consideration of this transition of errors that we are in the midst of, which draws the individual out to really stand alone, to really stand again, stabilize yourself on those gifts and talents and abilities and securities of your own doing and making. How do you do that in an ever-changing world where the change has been happening all along, but now it feels sudden? The residuals of it feel so sudden that those that haven't really been preparing for it and adjusting their levels along the way in the process feel at a loss. They feel at a loss because there's an unfamiliarity in this change that creates a pressure that feels overwhelming at this point, because the invitation now is to shift with the times or to be left behind. And when that's your choice and you don't feel equipped to make the shift effectively in a way that would help you transfer your way of life, your way of being, what is comfortable to you, into whatever this new era is shaping out to be, it can be quite overwhelming and depressing. There's a surrender and a submission that is unavoidable at this time. And for those that are looking around, they're feeling the pressure within their own beings and within their own bodies, because everyone is, more or less. But the difference is those that have adjusted their levels for the pressure are having a different experience. Those that have not and were pretty insistent to maintain their levels and their pressure points where they felt most comfortable, it's like, I don't know, it's like it feels like hopeless in a sense, because you're having to deal, like I said, with all the things of the past and reckoning with that, things that have brought you to this present moment, perhaps even acknowledging, as I said, where there may have been some marks missed along your pathway that would have properly prepared for the present moment. And then you're having to also gather yourself to move forward, because really there's really no time to mourn the past at this point. There's really not a whole lot of time, or I should say grace, to revel in shoulda, coulda, wouldas. It's like, okay, missed that train, let me try to get on the next one. You know what I mean? Or miss that plane, let me try to catch another one. It's really not a lot of grace to stay behind in a comfortable sense and stew over what you could have done differently as far as the past is concerned. There's only time to reconsider reflectively past decisions and actions and adjust and readjust for how you get to do something different now moving forward. And I think that's what really is causing the greatest pressure point for those finding themselves in emotional pain, because it's really like a mourning of all the things that were either of value or that created a sense of security or comfort in life. And in a lot of ways that was fitting in a certain type of way. And there are certain folks that are now facing this challenge and charge to answer to a higher calling, and it's unbearable was the word that I was really thinking of, not hopeless, but more so unbearable. Like, oh, this is just too much. I can't. How can I possibly manage all this and all at once and all, and coming from every angle for some? But it's like, you can do it if you want to do it. or there's the option to kind of just fall in with the crowd. But that's a completely different frequency that doesn't really have the same perks and privileges and bells and whistles as it does to live in your divine life and in your divine light and life, I guess, too, and your divine truth. And that's the disparity, as I said, from the pre-shuffle off camera, of those that have been, it was specifically the Knight of Pentacles that I saw a couple of times, that's just been putting in the work. And even the Nine of Wands, was it the Nine of Wands or the Eight of Wands, whatever the wounded warrior is, I think it's the nine, that's been just putting in the work, you know, like doing the best that they can, fighting a good fight to do the best with what you have against the status quo, you know, beyond the what's conventional and acceptable and palatable to society, to friends, to family. And at times it didn't really seem like the work was paying off much. You know, I saw the Seven of Pentacles at one point, and it didn't really seem like there was going to be a long-term, like a sure return on a long-standing investment. But at last, here we are, and there seems to be. So let's see. Let's keep going. Ooh, what's that? Occupation. Interesting. It kind of like popped back on me. It was a little bit, you know, a little shaky. But what's interesting, here it is. I know why. I had watched a YouTube video that was just in, like, you know, my recommended videos about how nursing is being hit hard by the recession in ways that it was always thought to kind of be fail proof. You know, like you will always need nurses, will always need doctors or people that are in the medical field. For the longest, I've always known it to be that. Now, this is a doctor in the picture, but it's just reminded me of what I literally just watched earlier today. And it was somebody, a guy that was talking, and he was posting other videos of testimonies of other nurses where the first line of fire is that they're cutting back on overtime. So you're not able, as a nurse, you could rely on doing above and beyond your 3 12-hour shifts a week, and maybe pull in 5 days of 12-hour shifts, or 6 days for some. And that's a hell of a lot of overtime that affords nurses a really, you know, it can depend on where you work, and a really comfortable, if not luxurious, lifestyle. And he was saying that his experience and many other nurses is that hospitals, for the sake of survival, especially from this new regime, are having to cut back on overtime so that you're only able to do your 3 days a week. So that's a significant cut in your income, you know, of which you've already pretty much like allocated your expenses from. And then there's that. And then there's also layoffs that are happening in the nurse profession that are unprecedented, because, as I said, at one point they were damn near paying you to be a nurse because there was such a shortage. But hospitals can't, because they're not receiving the federal and state funding that they're used to, or they're preparing not to under this administration. They're having to make cuts in those areas, and it's hurting nurses that have been used to living a really good life. They're having to figure out how to more or less cut back and you know, live more sustainably ultimately, which for many citizens is still a good living. But when you're used to living in a penthouse and driving a luxury car, and you know you can cover your vacation and your other, extra expenses just by working a couple days overtime, and now you don't have that option. It is a drastic lifestyle change. So what that brings me to is ultimately having to readjust from, again, the securities that were more or less a dime a dozen, that you thought you could rely on. It would always be here, and not just the medical field, but there are other things like that. Just having a job in general, like you go to college or you get some formal training or education, and you think there's definitely a job out there waiting for me somewhere. But these days, it's just not a reliable ideal. You could be a lucky one and get a job, first of all, a job, and then a job that actually supports your lifestyle, or enhances your lifestyle, and then actually like it. Those are all like really lucky breaks in society as we know it now. So it's saying something here about maybe some of this sorrowfulness and this overwhelm is coming from the rapid changes to what once was secure and stable, reliable, and in our country, at least, to speak for that specifically, that are changing. And we know that even healthcare is going to take a drastic, it's going to be a drastic change to healthcare and throughout this administration. The way things are going, we're on the verge of a government shutdown as we speak. If they can't pass a budget, which is like the lesser of two evils, because whatever is in the budget is probably a further detriment to the community, to the citizens of the country, most likely. But of course, a shutdown would also be a detriment in many other ways. So it's like having to always be flexible and transmutable, honestly, and transmutable in your body and in your environment, but also, as I said, like doing the best with whatever life is giving you. And also, here it is in the pre-shuffle, the Magician card came up a couple of, maybe even a few times in a very positive light. So it's really about manifesting the most ideal circumstances for yourself. And that manifestation must be pure. It can't be tainted as it has been in past times, where you could do it to the disadvantage or detriment of others, or step on others to get where you're going, or cut corners, or falsify your pathway in some way, shape, or form. The ones that are truly having a progressive experience at this time are the ones that have gone about it perhaps the long way, the hard way up until now, but it's more so about the integrity that was invested in that path, and behind those intentions. And integrity doesn't necessarily mean that the adverse of that is people that were completely dishonest or diabolical or, sinister or anything like that. But it even could be, in terms of integrity, being true to yourself, practically speaking. Some folks that went into nursing may not have really wanted to be a nurse. They just like the idea of the income that you could make, or the lifestyle that you could have, on account of that profession and being in that field. But what is your soul really desiring for you to do with your creative energy? It might not look like something conventional or traditional, and many of us, just by conditioning, have sidestepped what we felt we were called to do for the sake of security, or again, fitting in, being accepted, being understood, having a stable life, knowing you got a steady income, not doing the creative thing, but maybe doing the corporate thing because that's more reliable and dependable. And it's like, for all that invested energy in doing the so-called right thing, if it didn't really cater to uh the pureness of your spirit and the pureness of your heart, you could take inventory and feel like it was worthless at this point. And that has um its own impressions of emotional pain or anguish, or again just regret and remorse for not having chosen a different path, for not have chosen a different path. I was like, what was that? That sounded crazy. So yeah, something like that here. But I'm gonna get a couple more and then we're gonna close it out. Damn, I don't mean to be taking multiples, but because it's so hard. Yeah, endings. Wow, endings. Oh Lord, imprisonment. Oh my God. Endings, which is a 10. Imprisonment, which is 29 but 11, 91 but a 10. And here's another 12 but a 3 with the community. And the star seed is an 8, 53 but an 8. So just to throw those numbers out there for those that clock numbers. I usually don't too much when I'm dealing with tarot, but just in case. They speak so profoundly in these cards that you really can't miss it, which is good. I love that. But yeah, but here's those, it's like road closed, like end of the road. And that's wild. And the sun card was really prevalent. And look at this. This is really interesting. The sun card was really prevalent in the pre-shuffle as well. But see how this like this like, I don't even know what you call that, a ditch, or it looks like a complete separation of earth. Oh my gosh. This is exactly what I was talking about. Like two different experiences happening where there was a crossover, and maybe still is in some ways, into this more blissful, prosperous experience of life. It's all one earth though. We're all inhabiting the same space, but there is a split here. There's a split in experience. Crevasse, that's what that is, like a crevasse in the earth. And there are some that have already made this crossing by way of those adjustment of levels and ideals and intentions and ambitions and passions, so on and so forth. Maybe even careers, maybe, relationships, associations, like they've made the leap, before this crevasse expanded to the point where you would need a bridge to cross over. So there are some that are already over there, and there are some that are kind of stuck at this dead end, having to reroute to find another way over, if that is possible for them to do so. Because I guess the possibility is always there, but the perspective is the transportation, and of course the ambition is the vehicle, the diligence and the drive, literally the drive to want to see yourself on the other side, from sadness into bliss. For some, there might be a vacation of sorts, as they say, or you got to sit down for a little while, as they say, to really kind of dig yourself and reconsider your transgressions, if it is that deep. I'm not saying that that's the case for everybody, but maybe considering simply just how you may have imprisoned yourself, like shackled yourself to ideals and to limitations that are self-imposed, you know, or that are self-inflicted, or made agreements with such limitations and captivations, that you ultimately have to either do your time if it's earned, you know, justifiably, or see yourself out of it. You know, see your way out of it some way somehow. Again, fight the good fight like everyone else. Everyone has to do at some point, to free yourself, to fully be liberated, to live that star powered life that is should be your divine inheritance and your divine right to do so, you know. But this is really deep to me, this endings card. I mean, the surface of it all is, of course, that we are closing a season, a cycle, an era, and a new one is already underway. And they're already, it's like, you know, like when a company, a new establishment is opening up, but it's not quite done construction yet, but they've already started the hiring process. That's the energy I just got with this occupation card next to the endings. It's already started recruiting and interviewing and vetting the energies that get to occupy that space, that maybe perhaps get to build it, construct it all together, or contribute to that construction of what this new world frequency gets to be, even though it hasn't fully materialized yet. You know, it's not something that, I mean, if you look around, it looks more like this side of the road than it does anything else. But for those that have already been hired for the job, you know, or hired for the positions of empowerment in that frequency, they're already doing the work. They've been doing the work, even in ways that they didn't know they were doing the work. When you thought you were just keeping your head above water, you were doing the work. When you maintain your integrity, even when you could have done something sideways or crooked to get ahead or to advance, or even to hurt others, you know, or something that could hurt others for your benefit, and you didn't, you were already doing the work. When you had very little support to pursue your dreams or your passions, or your heart's desires, but you maintain that ambition anyway. You encouraged yourself. You were doing the work. When you did something that was completely against your conditioning, your culture, your upbringing, your family, your surroundings, your friends, your experience, your training, you were doing the work. While everyone else was going along to get along in one frequency or stepping on others to get ahead, those that were straddling that middle, you know, well, I don't know if it's a straddle between those things. Maybe it is. Maybe that is the balance. They were the bridge over this crevasse themselves. And now that reality is crystallizing, by way of the frequencies that these employees, so to speak, are embodying. I don't really, inhabitants are embodying. It has the bridge is being retracted, or in some cases it has been up, like, you know, that bridge that like draws up, you know, it goes up and down. It's being drawn back, so that if you don't have the proper credentials by way of your energetic frequency to cross over, you're pretty much, your best bet is to backtrack in some way, reflectively, and figure out how you can move forward to gain that clearance. And the despair here is that, as I said, the imprisonment is realizing how you've captivated yourself, how you've bound yourself, and and submitting to the shifts and perhaps in some cases sacrifices that are necessary to unbind yourself, those unbind yourself from those strongholds or whatever they may be. And it's easier said than done, as I said, because when you're not in a position to accept the change and the new, then that's the longer you stay captivated and bound. And the acceptance is, the preliminary step. And then there are a series of actions and reactions that come along with that aren't comfortable at first, but there's still an expectation of perseverance nonetheless. Otherwise, there is no crossing over. And the crazy thing about it, as I said before, is that this side can see very much so what's going on that side. They can see enough to know that they want to be over there. That's where the sun is. Rising and setting. That's where the sun is. And when you can see the destination, the ideal destination, but you can't conceive of how to get yourself there without doing some things that you ultimately really don't want to do, that can feel like a jail cell. Until you break those shackles and do it anyway. So yeah. Anyway, let's see, because of course we're divine masculine. Look at that, the first card in the deck. We're back at 1. Wow. Divine masculine. This could be so many different things. It could be that patriarchal mentality. It could be the masculine energy itself or frequency itself. It could be men, actually, you know what I mean? Because we embody the masculine and feminine, but it could be a special message to men, but it is speaking of the divine masculine, and the divine masculine is still supercharged to lead the way, if to go before the feminine energy, to secure, make things safe, make things sound, if possible, with the blessing and the covering of the divine feminine energy. That's why we are package deal, and that connection between those two frequencies must be mended and healed, and is in this sacred place, this new life experience, and I feel like that's a lot of what's been lagging, honestly, is for divine masculine to kind of catch up with divine feminine in a lot of ways, not to say all, but collectively, I should say, for there to be a catching up to evolve in such a way that there is alignment for this new way of life. Because a lot of the feminines is already over there or on their way, well on their way, even by way of, certain, something that comes to mind is very, very specific and practical, of course, but how I see a lot of feminines speaking on just like the act of abstinence, you know, some celibacy, but of course those are two different frequencies that often are interchangeable, and I hear when people are sharing. But if you already done the deed, then I think abstinence is the word that you're looking for. But yeah, abstinence holistically, you know, a lot of feminines are standing on that act of sanctity for their own body, you know, for the purposes of preserving their mind and spirit, or healing mind and spirit. And I see a lot of masculines too sometimes, you know, now it's picking up more about retention is what they say. You know, I guess it's the same thing, but it's like retention, and abstaining from intimacy, especially in the ways that are not meaningful, you know. So I don't know why I felt the need, but when I see divine masculine, I mean, I know you don't have to be sexless to be a divine masculine, but that's just one of the things that I was thinking of in terms of how the feminine energy has kind of been leading the charge. And it's really not so much about to be or not to be sexually active, but it's just about as there's a beep, but it's really about just how to reclaim your value, you know, in some ways to reestablish it, and to recondition yourself to it's your true worth, you know, outside of the standard, the status quo, the community, what you've been taught to believe of yourself. And that's just one of the ways, not exclusive, of course, but just one of the ways that I think is being exemplified in real time, in spirit and in flesh, literally. But anyway, the divine masculine, we still love you. We still hold you high in regard. And those that are fine, maybe this is a message about a lot of energy, masculine energies that are finding their way out of imprisonment, finally, thank God, you know, or that have, you know, in the nick of time, freed themselves from their captivities and are in a better space to really align with the feminine force, integrate the feminine force within them first of all, and then align with feminine forces outside of them, so that we can populate this promised land. And it doesn't have to be physically by way of babies. It could be, and it will be, of course, but even just energetically, that those two aligned energies are what's needed to populate to populate with a new sense of creativity, that is balanced, that is whole. Back to that three, that trinity frequency, that is whole, that there is no lacking or poverty on either polarity. Because if otherwise, whether it's heavily feminine or heavily masculine or exclusively one or the other, it would ultimately end up being more of what we've already had. And we don't really want that. We don't need anything to be all feminine or all masculine, all matriarchy or all patriarchy. We need it to be a happy, healthy union of the two, in spirit and in flesh. So yeah, divine masculine, we love you. We do. We do. We love you. We honor you. And we are making space. Those that are really operating in their supreme frequency are making space for the divine masculine to take his rightful position and place in leadership, you know, in the leadership role that has been destined and designed for him to do so. So there's that. One more on the bottom. Let's just see. Even though I can't quite get it, maybe I should leave it alone. Priest. Oh my gosh. Look at that. Oh, wow. Yeah, we honor you. We reverence you. That's the divinest of the divinest masculine. This is like the I did catch that in the guide. This is the counterpart of the high priestess. And didn't I say like the feminine energy is already on top of it? All pause. Is already ahead of the game in some ways. Not to say, we don't have our own works to do still and steady, but we're already been moving in that right direction, in that righteous direction. And if that is not the confirmation of an exalted masculine, I don't know what is. So there's some great hope on the horizon for the masculine energy. And it's all we need as a feminine force. Like, that's all we're missing, is to have that divine masculine energy by our side. Sometimes going before us, sometimes behind us, but always willing and able to stand by our side and support and understand and protect and provide and nurture in their own way. Like that's all we need. And most feminine energies, purely our organic feminine energies, don't want to take the spot of a masculine energy. They want to be feminine, fully feminine in their creativity. And what a world it gets to be where those two forces are equally yoked, to say the least, but to actually say the most. If you know, you know. You know? You know. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Wow, this was so much fun. I'm so happy I did this. I'm going to post this, of course. You already know if it's already posted. But yeah, shout out to Intuitive Kev. I don't know if he'll come across this, but hopefully one day our paths will officially cross. And I'll be able to really honor him and praise him for this contribution to the spiritual community, not just his cards and his artwork and his spiritual frequency, but just his presence. Like, we don't have a lot of there aren't a lot comparatively, there aren't a lot of masculine readers and spiritualists that I connect with. And obviously I haven't come across everyone that I should have come across just yet, but across my pathway, there aren't too many that you feel you can trust, that have that balanced voice of reason, that are well tapped into their feminine energy and their masculine unapologetically. And that we need that masculine perspective in a spiritual community. Again, it's not meant for it to be one-sided, or it would have been from the beginning of creation, So I'm very grateful to how he has shared himself through these cards and how he continues to share through his channel. And I hope that, all those that haven't been connected to him before, find a blessing there. Indeed. I'm sure you will, as a matter of fact. And again, I'm calling in more masculines to rise to the occasion of their star quality, of their supreme selves, by way of inspiration such as him and others. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. I'm thankful for how the message came through, and I'll definitely look forward to sharing more cards and more products coming soon. So stay tuned. All right. But for now, as always, I'll leave you with peace.